Okay, so we want to get into creating this as a website. So I'll chuck a little bit of content in. So obviously going to need a nav for our links, and then a section to hold this main content, and probably that'll be an H1 paragraph, and then this is basically a footer. So we'll whip that stuff in real quick, and then we'll kind of look at how do we lay this out. I've chucked some pre-stuff in, mainly because I'm lazy. No, it's just because it just makes life a little bit easier rather than having to retype everything that you guys should be getting a bit more familiar with. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right, so this one here is our grid parent, right? So this one is going to be our grid. The reason why we can do this, and this is because I've been doing a little bit of tinkering and watching videos from this individual here, and she does some very clever stuff with some very cool websites. I don't to give you an idea of this kind of stuff that she gets up to. What was she under? Lab. Yes, there we go. Right, this is her website here. This is actually like, there's her navigation, those are her links. And then as you shrink the web page down, it will then flip and have your content here and all this. But this legitimately is a grid layout that's been rotated. And this is a grid of like 1, 2, 3, 4 even spaces across, and then like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of down ish. So there you go. Okay, so that is probably actually a good point. Is then if we look at this, how many are we looking at in terms of spaces? Then we can say that this is a space here, 1 space here, 2 space there, 3 in the middle. Vertically, we've got 1 thing, 2 thing, 3 things. So it's just basically like it's a 3x3 grid. If I look at my Photoshop, this is kind of like the spacing. So I could say that this is evenly spaced of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 elements. So this could be an 8 by 1, 2, 3, effectively. Because this would be box 1. This big grey bit here would be, with this in the middle, would be grey. Box 2. So, or I could just say 1 box there, 1 stretch box there, 1 box there. So there's several ways to do this. So let's go from there, and we'll kind of go through all the different bits and pieces. Because realistically, being able to grid your layouts and think, oh yeah, what does it need to be? How does it need to be gridded out? Because once we get inside this box, so when we're inside our section is essentially gridless. The actual big black box itself is part of the grid, but once that's in the grid, the H1 and these are no longer in a grid. We could make a grid inside that grid if we wanted to grid lay that out as well. Right, enough of me yammering on. Right, so I'll just get some. Okay, that's that. It's a section. H1 of welcome. And then the P of the lorem ipsum. So if I click that and then go T, I can get the exact same lorem ipsum, which is just random generated text. And after the section was the footer. Okay. Which in theory should have something in it. Well, this is during the lockdown, but yeah, there we go. Let's go that way around. Oh, there's the... Right, there we go. Okay. So let's just see how this spits out on a page. We launch it. What are you doing up there? Right. No, I don't want you to keep trying to offer me translations. Right, so that's what it looks like, which is pretty stark. So let's look at some of the basics. Well, we've got a grey background. Let's do that. HTML background color grey. Font dash family. And I'm going to say Centauri Gothic. See if that works. Yep, so this will work there. Okay. Now, the body comes with 8 pixels margin by default. So I say margin 0 pixels. Right. Okay, so let's try and get this laying out like a grid. So we said we're going to have a chunk here, one big one, and a chunk here. So we can do it like that, or we can just do 8 even spaces. Doesn't really matter. So if I'm going to say that this gap here is maybe, say, 10%, maybe 15% of the website, and 70% on the inside, because 15 plus 15 is 30%. So display grids, grids dash templates columns. Now, rather than writing in repeat, because these are not the same, I might as well just write in 3 things, because we'll go with the 3 version layout. So from there, then we can say something along the lines of 15% or 15 view width, and then the middle part, say auto, which is gonna do whatever's left over, I think. Anyway, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And then 15 view width. Now, this height, I don't really need to specify heights because I'm wanting my content to kind of just do the talking for me. So I'm going to say grid. Grid template. Grid template rows, and I'm going to say repeat 3 auto, and it's just going to automatically just be whatever the content is in terms of its height. So it's a random height, whatever's needed. Okay. So I'm going to say nav. Okay, let's not get too. Oh, let's just give this a background color. Background color black. Nav a color. Pretty sure the text is gold. Okay. I'm just going to check in the section background color. Black. Footer. Background color. I'm just going to make this red. Mainly because just to tell these two apart. I should be able to tell that one apart, right? H1 color gold. And then you can do font sizes and other bits and pieces, but we're not too worried about that. And the P, say color white. So I've covered gold text here, the white color there, nothing in there. Oh, actually, my P for my footer, because I actually did put a bit of text in there, should be white anyway, so that is all good. Right, so if I try and launch that, we've got this. I'm just going to take this and shove that over into my Firefox Nightly, which is my developers edition of this, mainly because the developers tools, when you go under layout, so when I say I want the div main grid, you can see it here. So I've got 1 and 4, and there's just 1 to 3. It's just nothing's in there because it's all squashed up. Mainly because I haven't assigned anything to anything. So you can see this is 1, 2, 3, sitting in those side sections. So if I start now assigning things, so my nav, I can say grid dash column 1, 2, 4, because I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, as because we count the lines, and the first one starts from 1, not 0. 1 to 4. Right, let's see what that does. See, there you go. That fills that whole strip. Now this little section's trying to sit here. So we'll take this section and we'll say column. The other thing I could do, because there's this other one called span, I can say grid span. So column dash span. Yeah, there we go. And I can say I want you to span 4. I think that's what we do. Oh, I have to look that up. We'll put it back to how we had it. Again, it's not particularly wrong. It's just that's more of a structured way to do it. Okay. Section. Grid column. We're going to say 2/3. And this should assume I can't fit on this row. Go down to the next row. Anyway, and footer grid dash column 1/4. There you go. We've got our layout. So we can see. Sorry, that's probably the ugly one to look at. Right. You can see there's the layout there, there, and we've got that there. Okay, great. So how do we space some of these things out? How do we go from there? So I can put some spacer on my nav. I can say margin top bottom of say something like 5 VH view height and left right of 0 pixels. If I get out of that part there, you can see, there you go, there's my space. I can also say the same thing for my footer. Margin 5 VH, VH, left right 0 pixels. Now, I'm curious as to why my footer is a little bit chunkier. Why is my footer chunkier? There is padding on my P. So we can see when we highlight over my P, the orange there. Yeah, So, I don't know why that's... So if I go footer P, because my P has no... Oh, it's got default spacing. Yeah. Put in margin 5 pixels. Left, right, 0 pixels. That's thinned it right down. Okay. And I did this because that grabs this particular P, but my section also has a P in it, which has got my big remap sim stuff, and that also has spacing on it. But that's not affected. Same with the H1, that comes with spacing built into it, nothing that I've specified, because it comes by default. Right, so what's left on our list? So we need to space this more, we need to get this text set in the middle. I can get the line numbers off, I don't need them there, but you can see my dotted boxes, those are where my things are now. I can also space this grey from this, because I can put margin up around my section. So I can say, margin top bottom, say 10 VH, and left right 0 pixels. There you go, so that blue part there is now, it's highlighted as the space. You can see it's now created. I can say I want this top one to be that much, X amount of size, X amount of size, X amount of size. So I could have done something like this for this. And that would have kind of got my 70% perhaps. Should we try that, see what it looks like? Oops. Copy. Paste, but that should be view height because we're going vertical now. So the only thing I can think of that would need to have 70 inch. There you go. Okay. So that can do that. If I have got those view heights, do I need these margins? Got the footer, got the section nav on there. Let's see what it does. So it's got the content to fill, which it shouldn't do. Right, so there is grids dash fill. There is something to do with the fill, which will turn this off so it doesn't try and automatically fill everything. Which I'll try and look up very quickly. CSS Grids. Fill cell. CSS Tricks is always a very good website for looking up stuff. It gets a little bit more detailed. grid auto rows fill. See if that made a difference. Nope, none whatsoever. Let's have a look through here. Just pause that. Right, so we go back. I've had a wee think around and I figured out what the issue was. So currently this is, yeah, it's occupying way more space than it should. And I was wanting to say, just be as wide as you are, but sit in the box somewhere. And it's currently wanting to make this nav fill the whole content. So what we want to do is we want to get this item to align itself in this box, just to align as vertical, justify as horizontal. So we want to align it vertically in the middle. And then just be, so if I go align self, center, there, done. And then I can say, same to the footer, align self, center, done. So there you go. So you get that there. This one here is going to fill this content, so I could say align self to this one. And then I could put a height on that box, I guess. So I could say to this one, align self center. Great, now it's super skinny. And then I would do something like this, min height, which means it can grow more if it needs to. Then I would say, I don't know, maybe 40%, 40 of the VH. Right. Oh. There you go. 40 is a bit more meaty, so I might say 50. There you go. That's looking much better. We've got our layout. It's all going to sit there. It's all going to scale up and down all lovely. Right, so we'll just quickly whack some text center and space some text very quickly, and that'll be us. And that's just a real basic, simple layout, but it's getting a website and just going, oh, how can I use grid? Now you can do grids inside grids, and we'll get into all that kind of stuff, and I'll actually do some slightly more complicated layouts and start going, how do we lay this out? How do we break this down? And then, yeah, and then like, there's some really, really cool stuff you can do, which we'll focus on doing some product pages and seeing what we can do there. So the nav section there, we want the text to align center, so text align center, done. We want the text to space from each other, so margin, oh yeah, so we just say margin, top, bottom, 0 pixels, left, right, we'll say, I don't know, like 5% from each other, or 5 VW, which is the view width of the window. See, it makes virtually no difference whatsoever. Nav a hover, which is when you hover over it. We're going to say color white. And I'm going to say text decoration, dash decoration, none, which gets rid of the underline. So there we go, we got a little hover. Welcome. Okay, so we want to space out that. So margin, top, bottom. I can say, okay, I want to specify that it is 10 pixels, and left, right, I want it to be 20 pixels. Right? So you can see that. Oh, okay, fine there. That's yellowy section there is where the spacer is. Right, and then we want to get the P as well. So I'm basically just going to copy this. You know what? I'm too lazy. I'm just going to do that. Because the P, I've told it to be white anyway, and so it overrides that. So I said, I want you to get the same spacing. So you go, same spacing, sitting there. doing that, I can scale this up and down. It all sits nicely. Oh yeah, I forgot my footer. Let's make this black and text align center. There you go. So that there is a nice scaling, very simple website, but that is a website with using CSS Grids. We could have done it with a lot more sideways stuff, but you see you don't need a lot of that. If I had a layout where I had blocks of content that were separate and different, because inside this main section part, sorry, let's jump around up here. So inside this main section part, if I wanted things laid out in boxes, in zones or whatever, then I would do a grid for this. So if I just want to really quickly chuck that on, section, all right, display grid, grid dash templates, columns, repeat 6, and I'll say 1 grid dash template dash rows, and I'll say repeat 3, comma, I don't know, I'll say 100 pixels just to put something in there. And then when I get into here, you can see there's my section div. So you can see, okay, let's turn the main one off. So you can see it's got that in there as well. So that's got a section, and obviously it's trying to put this paragraph of text in the next box along. So you can do grids within grids within grids as much as you want. But obviously that there is a little bit unhelpful for what we're trying to do at the moment. There you go.